All right, we need to have another conversation about pensions, state pension, and retirement planning as a whole, because there is a gap forming right now that is potentially going to cost people tens of thousands of pounds if action isn't taken sooner rather than later. And I don't mean to scaremonger anybody in this video. That is not my intention, but this is a problem that exists right now and will become an even bigger problem if recommendations like the state pension age being pushed to age 71 is actually taken up. What am I talking about? Well, let's dive into it. I think it's safe to say when you compare where we are right now to the 50s and the 60s, people are living much longer lives. And that doesn't mean that there are no challenges in doing so. There are still health issues. But someone who retired in the 1950s and 60s probably would only have maybe 10, 15 years in retirement. Life expectancy has grown so much that someone who retires in their 60s is likely to be in retirement for 20, maybe even 30 years. And that's really one of the core reasons why the government has recommendations to push the state pension age to 71, which for many people is absolutely unthinkable. And as you can imagine, I pay a lot of attention to news. I pay a lot of attention to surveys, to research papers, to find things that I think will be worthwhile speaking about here on this channel. And this is definitely one of them because it is a problem right now and it will only get bigger. So I want to just reference the Family Resources Survey. And they did this survey for the financial year of 2020-2021. And what they found is that approximately 42% of individuals aged between 60 and 64 report having some form of disability. Now, what does disability mean? So a person is considered to have a disability if they have a physical or mental impairment that has substantial or long-term negative effects on their ability to do normal daily activities. That's the official definition of a disability according to the Equalities Act of 2010. Now, the important thing here, and again, the numbers are what's important. The current state pension age has been equalised at age 66. We're reporting, or they found, 42% of individuals aged between 60 and 64 have some kind of disability. This is before the state pension kicks in. When you look at this graph right here, what it paints out is how many people are reporting disabilities across different age groups. And as you can see, for those people aged between 60 and 64, in this first column, mobility is the biggest disability that is being reported. And that in itself is an issue. So if you have mobility issues, the question then becomes, are you going to be able to continue working? Are you going to be able to carry on the same quality of life and activities as you were able to before you had those mobility issues? That's questionable. I would say that maybe there will be a portion, if not a good portion of those people that may be limited on the kind of work that they can do if they are still needing to work whilst they're between the ages of 60 and 64. But this is where the real problem comes in, and those of you who are quite on the pulse of things will know where this is going. If you are unlucky enough to have a disability that impacts how you work and how much money you can earn, and let's just say that happens at age 60, you may have 6 years before the state pension kicks in, and you would need to effectively supplement your income if you're in that position where you cannot work. This could potentially cost you tens of thousands of pounds in income requirement, funding of income, and that would have to come from some type of private pension or private arrangement because you're not eligible to access your state pension just yet. Now, there are a number of ways in which you could tackle that issue, and this is dependent on the fact of whether or not you have a private pension, workplace pensions that you've stacked up during your working career. And one of the most popular ways that people might approach this is to say, well, if they haven't already taken their tax-free cash, which is 25% of the overall value of the pensions that you've acquired during your work life, if you hadn't taken that 25% at that point or that stage in life, you may decide that you take that as an income completely tax-free. For those people who have already taken the tax-free cash from their pension pot at this phase of life, well, now you have to turn on your pension and basically generate income from that. Now, the state pension currently as it is going to pay £11,502 per year. So it equates to something like £220 per week. Now, if you are used to the estimation of just the state pension, and the state pension isn't going to buy you the most attractive quality of life, I can reference this video right here, which you can go and watch, which really just lays out the type or the quality of retirement that the state pension will give you. So if you take just £11,502, the question is it going to be enough? But do you have a pension pot large enough to be able to provide that income? That's the real question. When it comes to the genders, we know that there is less being accumulated by women through their working life in a private pension. But when you think about the average pot accumulated in a pension, by the time people get to retirement age, it is only £107,300 on average. That's the average retirement pot that people have amassed through workplace pensions, private pensions, by the time they get to retirement age. I don't know about you, but £107,000 isn't going to fund a lot. And this is where you have planning problems, right? So when you sit down and you think about how are you going to generate the income that you need, you have to identify exactly how much income you need. And typically as a financial advisor, when I would work with a client, that would be the first question we ask. And let's just say hypothetically, you needed £20,000 per year. Well, you would factor in the state pension clearly, because the state pension is going to form the bulk of your income requirement because you've worked for that. So in this equation, £11,502 per year, which means you only need to find roughly around about what, £8,500 roughly in order to meet your £20,000 requirement from £103,000 if you've amassed that much in a workplace or private pension. The problem here though is that when you plan this, and let's just say you are diagnosed or you do have a disability at age 60 and you have a 6-year gap to fund your retirement, you effectively have to find £20,000 every single year for 6 years until your state pension kicks in. And for many people, their private pension arrangements simply are not enough to make it sustainable. And so issues like, how is it invested to ensure that what you're taking out doesn't completely erode your capital come into play? And that is one that you've got to tackle at the time. You can't necessarily forecast or you can pre-plan that in proper financial planning, retirement planning, you can pre-plan it. But if you've not done that prior, it depends on a number of factors, economic factors, the global economy specifically, and how the market is reacting to that economy. At that point, if we just take the state pension, for example, 11,506, which is about what, £959 per month, roughly. That's almost £1,000 a month. In order for you to be able to get that back, you're looking at a pretty decent return that you need to acquire within your pension pot, especially if you have only £107,000, by the way, to be able to make sure that your capital remains intact. Now, when you plan this, and again, we're looking at this from the perspective that you're 60, 6 years to state pension being in, you've got to fund £20,000 per year for the 6 years. The return is going to be important. We would account for the fact that state pension will kick in at some point so you can reduce the amount of money you take from your private pension. But what I'm trying to point out here is that if you don't have the provisions and you are unfortunate enough to be age 60 to 64, where you have some form of disability that impacts how you work, and you don't have adequate pension provisions, that's a real quality of life issue. So why am I making this video? I'm making this video to kind of highlight that this is a problem. I know that most of you who watch my channel are in your 30s, 40s, you still have time to plan for this. And so the moral of this is to say, make sure that you're maximizing and taking advantage of your retirement opportunities right now, be that your workplace pension, private pension, SIP, whatever. Make sure you're contributing to this thing to ensure that you have some kind of provision later on in life. We don't know what is going to happen. You might be part of the larger pool of people, the other 58% of people who don't have any disabilities or mobility issues, right? But you might. And so pre-planning is really important. You have time to do something about it now. And look, if I had to give you some tips, if you're in a workplace pension, make sure that you're contributing. Make sure you've not opted out. If you have a matching scheme, even better. Make sure that you max out as much as you possibly can. If you are earning really, really well, you have the ability to salary sacrifice. Make sure that you are doing that. If you are in a private pension, make sure that you're contributing adequately, especially if you run your own business. It is a cost to the business, so it can reduce your corporation tax, but make sure you're contributing to something, you know? Make sure that you're doing everything that you can do, because at some point it will be too late. At some point, it doesn't matter what you decide to do. If you don't have the income, it's not gonna make any difference. And the amounts that you're gonna need become increasingly more challenging as you get older. So time is on your side right now. If you are curious about when is too late to start planning for retirement, well, this video right here is the next one to watch. Thanks for watching. I hope this was useful. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.